Alright guys, what's up? It's Tim here at R1 Works. I am here with our team driver Jordan Yancey. He just finished building the rear suspension for our DC1, and right now we're gonna review it with you guys, and he's gonna give you some little hints and tips on how to build it. So let's just dive into it.
Alright, so first we're gonna put the C-block on the riser plate, and I'm using 8mm countersunk screws to bolt that down. Now we're going to use the AE rear arm mount pills. And I'm using the 1 degree pills, and the position that they're in is middle and out. Alright, so now I'm assembling the rear trans riser with the rear hex standoffs. Now I'm going to start assembling the rear hubs with starting with putting the bearings inside of the hubs, and then I will mount the rear hub onto the arms.
Do you have to remount these arms at all, or they're good?
The AE arms are actually good. They don't need no reaming out. They don't need no reaming. And then I'm putting the rear hub inserts. I'm using the position that they're going in is the hole is all the way down, so that'll raise the hub up as much as possible. And for the rear hub spacers, I'm actually putting them in the front of the arm, in front of the hub. Sorry. And with this rear hinge pin, I'm just barely snugging it down. I'm not tightening it all the way. You want the hubs to still be free. These are 25 mil limbs, button head screws that are going through there with a 2 mil shim in front of the hub mount. And then on the very inside, we'll put the rear hub adapter on, and we'll use a lock nut to tighten that down. And now I'm going to put the ball stud on. I'm using 1.5 mil of shimming for the outside. And for this rear hub adapter, it's okay to tighten it down pretty good. It's not a moving part, so you can tighten this part down. Now we're about to put the dog bone onto the CVA axle itself. And right here, we're just putting the rear hex on. The pin is going through the CVA axle itself. And then you're putting the hex on. Just do not over tighten the little screw that goes into the hex to clamp it down. I'm actually putting the rear riser onto the hub adapter to start assembling the full rear floating body mount assembly. Now I'm going to start putting the shock tower together. This right here is the rear shock tower centering bracket spacer that I'm putting onto the rear crossbar itself using a 12 mil button head screw. Right here, I'm using a 10 mil button head screws with a 2 mil spacer in between the actual rear center bracket spacer itself and the centering bracket. And right here, now we can start putting the rear shock tower onto the back of the transmission that Tom showed us how to build. We're going to mount the transmission to the transmission riser. These are 8 mil countersink screws. And these right here are 10 mil button heads that I'm using for the front of the transmission. Now I'm putting the hinge pans through the rear pills, and I'm putting a spacer in the front just to give ourselves more room if you want to run a bigger spur gear. So the spur gear is not touching the arms or rubbing. And now that we have the rear arms attached to the hinge pins, now we're about to put the rear pills into the C blocks, and I'm using the up and in for the rear, for the D block, I'm sorry. And to tighten down the D block to the back of the transmission, I'm using the 18 millimeter countersink screws. And I'm just putting this last rear hex standoff, the last two, onto the back of the rear riser. And this is using the 8 mil button head for the top. And here I'm using the 18 millimeter button head. Through the rear shock tower, it's a slot back there. And then using that spacer that'll be provided with it, and a washer, then a locking nut. And I'm tightening that all the way down. Here I'm just making sure everything is moving freely before we move on to the next step. Now I'll be drilling out these ball cups so we can put our turnbuckles together. And you want to measure the ball cup, the distance between the both of them, just so you can get a idea of where it should be. And later, most people will put the car on a setup station or use a camber gauge to get the camber exactly where they want it. For drag racing, we typically run 0 camber. Now I'm getting the ball stud washers. I'm using 5 mil of spacing for the inner camber, for the inner ball stud, I'm sorry. And now I'm just putting the ball cups into the ball studs.
And that's it, huh?
Yeah, just make sure everything is free after you do this last step.
Well, hell yeah. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, dude. It was fun to watch. Look forward to watching tomorrow when you put everything on the chassis and really get the car
so
together.
You have a full car.
Yeah, dude.